A sandstorm drove her into his shelter. What she found changed everything. Escaping a sandstorm, she entered his shelter and discovered humans weren't extinct after all. The soft hum of Nera's ancestral staff was the only sound accompanying her labored breathing as she trudged across the endless dunes. Her once pristine golden outfit designed for the lush forests of her home world now clung to her blue skin, coated with a fine layer of sand that seemed to find its way into every crease and fold. 3 days since she had emerged from the portal, disoriented and terrified. 3 days since she'd watched her world burn, her people slaughtered by the merciless Krevak forces that had descended without warning upon her peaceful planet. Keep moving, she whispered to herself, her melodic voice cracking from thirst. Just keep moving. The twin suns of this desert world beat down relentlessly, turning their horizon into a shimmering mirage. Nera's silvery white hair, once her pride and joy, now hung in matted strands around her face. She'd tied most of it back with a strip torn from her sleeve, but several stubborn locks still whipped across her vision with each gust of wind. Those gusts were growing stronger. Nara paused, planting her staff in the sand to steady herself as she gazed toward the western horizon. Her heart sank. A massive wall of swirling sand was approaching, a sandstorm unlike any she'd seen before, even in the ancient texts of her people. No, she breathed, panic rising in her chest. Not now. She spun around desperately, searching for shelter. The flat expanse of dunes offered nothing but more sand in every direction except for a small dark smudge to the north. Squinting, she could just make out what appeared to be a rock formation, perhaps for mile away. It was her only hope. Gripping her staff tightly, Nera began to run, her legs burning with the effort of pushing through the shifting sand. The wind picked up, pelting her exposed skin with tiny grains that stung like needles. The storm was moving faster than she'd anticipated, the roar of it growing louder with each passing second. The rock formation grew closer, revealing itself to be a jagged outcropping with several dark crevices, potential shelters from the approaching maelstrom. Nera pushed herself harder, her lungs screaming for relief as the first powerful gusts of the storm reached her, nearly knocking her off her feet. With a final burst of desperate energy, she reached the rocks and dove into the largest opening she could see. The narrow entrance widened into what appeared to be a small cave. Nera collapsed onto her hands and knees, gasping for breath as the storm howled outside, completely obscuring their entrance with a wall of swirling sand. Safe, she whispered, allowing herself a moment of relief, for now. As her breathing steadied, Nera became aware of something unusual, a faint flickering light deeper within their cave, and with it the unmistakable scent of burning wood. She wasn't alone. Clutching her staff defensively, Nera rose to her feet and cautiously moved deeper into the cave. The passage twisted and turned, the dancing light growing stronger with each step. Strange shadows played across the stone walls, and as she rounded a final bend, she froze. A figure sat beside a small fire, cloaked in a worn pale mantle with a deep hood, the color of desert sand. The figure was completely still, facing away from her. Seemingly unaware of her presence, Nera hesitated, weighing her options. The storm outside left her no choice but to seek shelter here. But who or what was this mysterious being? Friend or foe? Another refugee like herself, or something more sinister? Before she could decide whether to announce herself or retreat, their figure spoke without turning. The storm drove you here, I presume. Their voice was deep, resonant, unmistakably male. You're welcome to share my fire until it passes. Nera's grip tightened on her staff. How did you know I was here? I heard you breathing. The figure turned slowly, lifting his head. The hood fell back slightly, revealing a face that made Nera's heart stop. Warm brown eyes regarded her with calm curiosity from a weathered face. Matanner, not the face of any species she recognized. No scales, no fur, no bioluminescent markings, just smooth skin the color of burnished copper, with strange soft-looking hair above the eyes and in covering the lower portion of the face. You're human, she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. The man's eyes widened slightly. And you know of my kind? He gestured to the space across the fire. Please sit, the storm will last for hours yet. Nera remained frozen, her mind racing. Humans were extinct. Everyone knew that they had vanished from their galaxy millennia ago, leaving behind only ruins and legends. Yet here one sat, alive and breathing, regarding her with those strangely expressive eyes. Don't be afraid, he said softly, his deep voice somehow reassuring despite her shock. I won't harm you. Something in his tone and the slight sadness that tinged his words made Nera believe him cautiously. She approached and sat across from him, keeping her staff within easy reach. My name is Nera, she offered, studying him openly now of the Olari people. Alari, he repeated as if testing the word. I've not heard of your kind before. He inclined his head slightly. I am Daniel, last survivor of the human research outpost on this world. Oh. Last survivor, Nera echoed. Then there were others. A shadow passed over Daniel's face, once not anymore there. Crackling of the fire filled the silence between them as Nera absorbed this information. A living, breathing human there. Implications were staggering. You said you know of humans, Daniel prompted after a moment. How we've been gone from their galactic stage for a very long time. Nera hesitated, then decided truth was her best option. Everyone knows of humans. Your species is a legendary, the warriors who challenged the Dominion, who fought impossible odds and vanished into myth, but you're supposed to be extinct. Daniel's lips curved into a slight smile. Yeah, reports of our extinction have been exaggerated. Outside the storm howled with renewed fury, but within the cave Nera felt their first stirrings of something she hadn't expected to feel again after watching her world burn. Hope as the storm raged. Outside, Nera found herself studying Daniel's features with growing fascination. There was something strangely appealing about his alien appearance, the warm brown of his eyes, the strong line of his jaw beneath a short beard, the expressive way his face moved when he spoke. Your world, Daniel said, breaking the silence. Tell me what happened. Nera's grip tightened on her staff as memories flooded back. The screams, the fires, the merciless efficiency of their invaders. They came without warning, she began, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. The KAC, their ships darkened our skies like a plague of locusts. Daniel's posture changed instantly, his body tensing. The CAC. You're certain? Yes, Nero replied, surprised by his reaction. Six-limbed warriors with exoskeletons like burnished metal. They use some kind of energy weapons that she faltered. The memory too painful that disintegrate organic matter on contact. Daniel finished for her, his voice hard, leaving only ash behind. Nera stared at him. You know them, they are the reason humans are extinct, Daniel said bitterly. 3,000 years ago they nearly wiped us out. We fought back with everything we had, but in the end, he shook his head, those of us who survived went into hiding, deep hiding. But why target your species? Why mine? Daniel rose to his feet, pacing the small confines of the cave. There Kravak believed themselves to be the only species worthy of evolution. Any race that shows potential to challenge them is systematically eliminated. Nera felt a chill run through her that had nothing to do with the cave's temperature. My people were peaceful, we had no weapons, no defenses. But you had potential, Daniel said, stopping to look at her. Your staff, may I? Hesitantly, Nera handed over her ancestral staff. Daniel examined it with expert eyes, running his fingers over the intricate patterns etched into its surface. Remarkable, he murmured. This is a focusing device for psychic energy, isn't it? Are your people telepaths? How could you possibly know that? Nera asked, stunned. Instead of answering, Daniel walked to the back of the cave and pressed his palm against what appeared to be solid rock. To Nera's amazement, a seam appeared in the stone, widening into a doorway that revealed a softly lit passage beyond. I think it's time I showed you the truth, he said, extending his hand to her. There's more to this cave than meets the eye. Nera hesitated only briefly before placing her blue hand in his. His skin was warmer than hers, the touch sending an unexpected tingle up her arm. She followed him through the doorway into a sloping corridor that descended deep beneath the desert's surface. What is this place? She asked as they passed panels of softly glowing light embedded in the walls. Outpost 7, Daniel replied, one of 23 human monitoring stations scattered throughout the galaxy. We've been watching, waiting, gathering intelligence on the Kravak and other threats. The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with technology beyond anything NRA had ever seen. Holographic displays showed star systems, data streams, and surveillance footage from what appeared to be dozens of worlds for 3 millennia. Daniel continued, we've remained hidden, rebuilding our strength, developing technologies that could one day help us reclaim our place in the galaxy. He turned to face her, his expression grave. And now the Kbark are active again after centuries of dormancy. Nera moved closer to one of the displays, recognizing with a jolt the lush landscapes of her home world, now reduced to smoking ruins. You were watching my planet. We monitor all worlds. With species that show particular promise. Daniel admitted your people's psychic abilities made you of special interest. We had hoped to make contact eventually, but the quack moved faster than we anticipated. Nera turned to him, anger flaring. You knew they might come and you did nothing we couldn't. Daniel said, regret evident in his voice. Direct intervention would have revealed our existence the moment the quark detected human technology. They would have traced it back to our hidden colonies. He stepped closer, his eyes intense. I'm sorry, Nera, truly, but if humanity is to survive, if we're ever going to be strong enough to defeat them, we must remain ghosts. The logic was cold, but Nera couldn't deny it made a certain sense. Still, the thought of her people dying while humans watch from the shadows. How many of you are there? She asked, changing the subject. Here, just me now. The others? Daniel's expression darkened. There was an accident, a containment breach in the power core. I'm the only survivor. Nera felt a surge of empathy. They were both alone, both survivors of catastrophe. Without thinking, she reached out, placing her hand on his arm. I'm sorry. Daniel looked down at her hand, then met her gaze. Something passed between them, a recognition perhaps of shared loss and isolation. The air in their chamber seemed to grow warmer. You're the first person I've spoken to in over 2 years, he said softly, and you're the first human I've ever met, she replied, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing. I always thought your kind were just legends. His lips curved into a smile that transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. And what did the legend say about us? That you were fierce warriors, Nera said, not stepping away. Brilliant inventors. That you loved and fought with equal passion. And is the reality disappointing? There was a playful note in his voice now. No, Nera admitted, feeling a flush spread across her blue cheeks. Not disappointing at all. Daniel's gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes as a question in his expression. The monitoring station, the storm there, Kabak, all seemed to fade into the background as something new and unexpected sparked between them. I should show you where you can rest, Daniel said, his voice rougher than before. The storm will last through the night. Yes, Nera agreed, though neither of them moved immediately. That would be wise. Daniel led Nera through a series of corridors, each lined with technology that hummed with quiet efficiency. He pointed out various sections of the facility: living quarters, medical bay, communication center. Speaking with the practiced ease of a tour guide, though his eyes kept returning to her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. And this, he said, stopping before a circular chamber filled with holographic displays, is their analysis lab. Nera stepped inside, drawn to a central platform. What do you analyze here? Artifacts, technology, anything that might help us understand our enemies or potential allies. Daniel's gaze fell on her staff. May I? When she handed it to him, their fingers brushed, sending an electric sensation up her arm. Daniel seemed to feel it too, his breath catching slightly before he composed himself. I've always wondered about this, Nera said, watching as he placed the staff on the platform. It's been passed down through generations of my family, but its full purpose remains a mystery. We know it amplifies our natural abilities, but a sharp alarm cut through the air, red lights pulsing along the ceiling. Daniel's expression hardened instantly as he rushed to a nearby console. Proximity alert, he said, fingers flying across the controls. Something's entered the atmosphere. Holographic screens materialized around them, showing a small craft descending through the planet's upper atmosphere. Its design unmistakable even to Nera. Quack scout ship, she whispered, her blood running cold. They must have followed your portal signature, Daniel said, his voice tight. The storm might have masked your trail temporarily, but they are persistent hunters. What do? We prepare. Daniel activated another console. This outpost has defenses, but they are designed for concealment, not direct confrontation. If they discover us, the unspoken implication hung heavy in the air. They both knew what the Kravok did to their enemies. Wait, Daniel said, suddenly his attention returning to her staff. Their platform beneath it had begun to glow, lines of light tracing the intricate patterns etched into the ancient artifact. That's unexpected. What is it? Your staff. It's interfacing with our systems. Daniel's eyes widen as data streamed across the nearest display. The technology, it's compatible, more than compatible. It's responding to our security protocols as if it were designed to. Nera moved closer, watching in fascination as the staff pulsed with inner light. How is that possible? I'm not sure, but Daniel's voice trailed off as he studied the scrolling information. These symbols, they are similar to an ancient human script and the energy signature. He looked up at her wondering, his eyes narrow. I think our civilizations share a common ancestor. Before she could process this revelation, the alarm changed pitch, becoming more urgent. They've landed, Daniel said grimly. About 3 miles from here. The storm will slow them down, but they will be methodical, thorough. He moved quickly to another section of the lab, retrieving what looked like weapons from a concealed compartment. We need to activate their outpost's full defensive capabilities. Your staff might be the key. Nara took a deep breath, studying herself. Tell me what to do. The staff seems to be responding to your bio-YTHMS. If you can focus your energy through it like you would for your telepathic abilities, we might be able to unlock dormant functions in both the staff and our systems. Nara nodded, taking back the staff as her fingers closed around it. She felt a familiar warmth, but stronger now, as if the contact with human technology had awakened something within it. She closed her eyes, concentrating on channeling her energy. She'd been torched since childhood. The staff grew hot in her hands, vibrating with power around them. The facility systems responded, displays flickering with new information, previously dark sections illuminating. It's working, Daniel breathed, watching as defense schematics appeared on the main screen. You're unlocking protocols I didn't even know existed. When Nara opened her eyes, she found Daniel staring at her with undisguised admiration that was incredible. Their gazes locked, and in that moment, with danger approaching and ancient mysteries unfolding around them, something shifted between them. Their attraction that had been simmering beneath the surface flared into something more urgent, more primal. Daniel moved closer, his hand coming up to brush a strand of silvery hair from her face. You're remarkable, he said softly. Nara leaned into his touch, her blue skin contrasting with his tan fingers. So are you. The alarm continued its rhythmic warning, but neither moved away. In this moment of crisis, with death potentially hours away, the connection between them felt like the most natural thing in the universe. In my culture, Nero whispered, we believe that souls recognize each other across lifetimes, across species. And what does your soul recognize in me? Daniel asked, his voice husky. A kindred spirit, a warrior. Someone who understands loss. She placed her free hand against his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palm. Someone I trust. Daniel's eyes darkened with desire. Nero, if these are to be our last hours, then let's make them count. She finished for him. Their lips met in a kiss that transcended species in time. Tender at first, then growing in intensity as millennia of separation between their kinds melted away. Their staff fell forgotten to the floor as Nara's arms wound around Daniel's neck, his hands pulling her closer against him. They moved together toward the living quarters, the red warning lights casting an otherworldly glow across their skin. For this moment, the approaching danger only heightened the urgency of their connection, making each touch, each kiss, each hush, shared breath feel like a defiant celebration of life in the face of extinction. Dawn found them entwined in each other's arms, a tangle of copper and blue limbs against the stark white of Daniel's sleeping quarters. Nero awoke, first momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings before memories of the night flooded back. She turned to study Daniel's sleeping face, marveling at how peaceful he looked. The lines of worry temporarily smoothed away. Other night had been a revelation in more ways than one. The differences in their physiologies had led to moments of awkward humor and whispered guidance, but they'd found their rhythm together, discovering that despite evolving on different worlds, some things were truly universal. The insistent beeping of a monitor pulled her from her reverie. Daniel's eyes snapped open, instantly alert. The scouts, well, he said, sitting up. How long was I asleep? A few hours, Na replied, reaching for her golden outfit. The alarm changed tone. Daniel was already at a terminal pulling up surveillance data. They are getting closer. The storm has died down enough for them to make progress. He turned to her, his expression determined. We need to move quickly. They dressed efficiently, their intimacy of the night giving way to the urgency of survival as Daniel led her back to the command center. Anera couldn't help but notice how their dynamic had shifted. There was an ease between them now, a wordless understanding. I have a plan, Daniel said as they entered the main chamber. Two plans, actually. He activated a holographic display showing the surrounding desert. 6 red dots moved steadily toward their location. First, we use the outpost defensive systems to eliminate the scouts before they can report our position. He manipulated the display, highlighting various points around the facility. Your staff activated dormant security protocols, automated Weapon emplacements buried beneath the sand. If we can lure the Kravac into this valley, he indicated a narrow passage. Between dunes we can trigger a crossfire, they won't escape. Nera studied the tactical display, and if that fails, Daniel's expression turned grim. That's where Plan 2 comes in. He switched the display to show a different section of the facility, a hangar bay containing a sleek vessel unlike any Nera had seen before. The Pathfinder, Daniel explained, a long-range scout ship with stealth capabilities. It's small, but it can reach interstellar speeds. You're suggesting we run? NRA said, not as an accusation but as a statement of fact if necessary. Daniel acknowledged the outpost's self-destruct would ensure the Clark find nothing of value here. We could reach a human colony in the Sinise sector within 3 days. Nera's fingers traced the outline of the ship on the display and abandoned any other worlds in the Kravac path. Daniel's eyes met hers, understanding her concern. Not necessarily. The Pathfinder carries advanced communication equipment. Imikim. We could send warnings to potential targets, alert them to evacuate before the Kravac arrive, like my world should have been warned, Nera said softly. Daniel took her hand, his touch gentle. I can't change what happened to your people, Nera, but I can help you prevent it from happening to others. Their sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. In the short time they'd known each other, this human had shown her more compassion and understanding than she thought possible from a species of legendary warriors. Let's try their trap first, she decided. I want to hurt them for what they did to my world. Daniel nodded, a fierce smile crossing his face. I was hoping you'd say that they spent the next hour preparing. Daniel programmed the weapon in placements while Nera used her staff to create a false energy signature that would draw the Kvak to the trap. Working together they moved with surprising efficiency, anticipating each other's needs without having to ask. You know, Nera said as she calibrated her staff, on my world there's a belief that when two souls join physically they create a temporary bond, a heightened awareness of each other. Daniel glanced up from his console, a playful light in his eyes. Is that why? I can almost guess what you're thinking. Perhaps, she replied with a smile, or perhaps humans and Olari are more alike than either of us realized. Speaking of similarities, Daniel said, there's something I've been meaning to ask. Last night when he paused, searching for words when we mated. Ness applied, amused by his sudden awkwardness. Here that Daniel cleared his throat. You mentioned a ritual from your world, something about binding stars. Nera felt her cheeks warm with a deeper blue flush. The binding of stars is an eerie tradition. When two people choose each other as life partners, they perform a ceremony under the night sky, symbolically connecting their life forces like stars in a constellation. And you whispered those words during our. Daniel gestured vaguely. It was instinctive, Nera admitted. In moments of intense emotion we often invoke sacred phrases. I didn't mean to imply I liked it. Daniel interrupted, his expression softening. It was beautiful. Before Nera could respond, an alert sounded from the console. Daniel's attention snapped back to the display. They are entering the valley or not, he said, tension returning to his voice. It's time. Nera took her position at the secondary console, staff in hand. Through the surveillance feed they watched as 6 Kravac scouts moved through the narrow passage, their armored exoskeletons glinting in the morning sun. Each carried weapons that Nero recognized all too well, their disintegration rifles that had turned her people to ash. On my mark, Daniel said, fingers poised over the activation sequence. 3, 2, 1. Now channeled energy through her staff, creating a pulse that mimicked a powerful energy source, irresistible bait for their Kravac. Simultaneously Daniel triggered the buried weapon emplacements. The valley erupted in a coordinated barrage of energy blasts. The Kravac scouts caught in the crossfire had no time to react. 5 of them fell immediately, their armored bodies crumpling under the precision strikes, but the 6th, slightly behind the others, managed to dive behind a rock formation. They watched as it activated a communication device on its arm. It's sending a transmission, Daniel said, fingers flying across the console as he attempted to jam the signal. Too late, the message got through. Their eyes met across the command center, both knowing what this meant. How long? Near asked. Before reinforcements arrive. Hours, maybe less. Daniel's jaw set in determination. Looks like we're going with Plan 2 after all. Initiate self-destruct sequence, Daniel commanded, his fingers flying across the control panel. Authorization Phoenix 7. Delta 9 self-destruct sequence initiated, responded the outpost to his computer. Time to detonation 15 minutes. Nera gathered the few supplies they'd need for their journey. Emergency rations, Medical supplies and most importantly her staff. The hangar is 3 levels down. Correct, Daniel nodded, slinging a pack over his shoulder and checking the energy pistol at his hip. Will take the maintenance shaft, it's faster than their main quarters. They move swiftly through their facility, the countdown to destruction adding urgency to their steps. The Pathfinder awaited them, their ticket to safety and their chance to warn others about the Quark threat. What's that? Nera stopped, suddenly tilting her head. Did you hear something? Daniel froze, listening intently. A faint scraping sound echoed through the corridor, metal against metal. Deliberate and slow, the scout, he whispered, drawing his weapon. It must have survived and found a way in. Nera gripped her staff tighter, feeling the energy pulse through it in response to her rising adrenaline. How? The outer doors are sealed. Maintenance ducts, probably the same ones we're heading for. Daniel's expression darkened. These things are persistent and now it's between us and our escape route. They pressed themselves against the wall, advancing cautiously toward the junction where the sound had originated. Daniel signaled for Nera to stay behind him, but she moved to his side instead, staff at the ready. I'm not helpless, she whispered, a fierce determination in her eyes. Daniel's lips quirked into a brief smile. I'm starting to see that. The scraping grew louder as they approached the junction. Daniel peered around their corner, then quickly pulled back. It's there, he confirmed, wounded but still dangerous, and it's directly in our path to the hangar. Self-destruct in 12 minutes, the computer announced calmly. Nera took a deep breath, centering herself as she'd been taught. I have an idea, my staff. When I channel energy through it, I can create a pulse that might disorient it long enough for us to attack. Daniel considered this. Quack sensory systems are highly evolved, especially for detecting energy signatures. A sudden surge might overload them temporarily. Exactly. Nera closed her eyes, focusing her energy. The staff began to glow with an inner light pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. On my signal, we move. Daniel readied his weapon, his body tense like a coiled spring. Their eyes met for a brief moment, a silent acknowledgement of the danger and something more. In the short time they'd known each other, they'd formed a connection that transcended their different origins. Now thrust her staff forward, sending a blinding pulse of energy around the corner. A high-pitched screech told them the plan had worked. They rounded the corner to find the Krabak scout thrashing its sensory appendages, retracting in pain, but even disoriented it was deadly. One armored limb swung wildly, catching Daniel across the chest and sending him crashing into the wall. Nera didn't hesitate. She brought her staff down hard on the creature's central nerve cluster, a vulnerability she'd learned about during the invasion of her world. The Krabak staggered but didn't fall. Daniel recovered quickly, firing his energy pistol at the scout's damaged leg joint. The creature stumbled, giving Nera an opening to strike again with her staff, this time targeting the breathing apparatus at the base of its neck. The Krabak let out a gurgling sound, green fluid leaking from the damaged respirator. It lunged at Nera with surprising speed, metal claws extended. She ducked, but not quite fast enough. One claw grazed her shoulder, tearing through her golden outfit and drawing a line of iridescent blue blood. Daniel roared with fury, throwing himself at the creature. With reckless abandon they crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs. Human and alien. Nera watched in amazement as Daniel fought with a primal intensity she hadn't expected from his usually calm demeanor. The neck joint, she called out, spotting a weakness in the Krabak's armor where her earlier blow had loosened a plate. Daniel didn't hesitate. He jammed his pistol into the exposed gap and fired. The Krabak convulsed once, then went still. Self-destruct in 8 minutes, the computer reminded them. Daniel rose shakily to his feet, breathing hard. His eyes immediately went to Nera's wounded shoulder. You're hurt. It's superficial, she assured him, though the cut stung fiercely. We need to move. They navigated around the fallen Krabak and hurried toward the maintenance shaft as they climbed down to the hangar level. Nera couldn't help but marvel at what she just witnessed. You fought differently than I expected, she said. As they reached the bottom, Daniel glanced at her, a questioning look in his eyes. The legends speak of humans as tactical fighters using technology and strategy, Nera explained, but you fought with such passion, such raw intensity. A rise smile crossed Daniel's face. Humans are complicated. We can be logical, strategic, civilized, but threaten someone we care about and something more primal takes over. His eyes lingered on her injured shoulder. When I saw it hurt you, I wasn't thinking tactically anymore. The implication of his words sent a warm flutter through Nera's chest. Despite the danger, despite the countdown to Destruction ticking away. She felt a surge of emotion that momentarily overwhelmed her. In my culture, she said, softly, protecting one's mate is the highest expression of devotion. Daniel's eyes darkened with an intensity that had nothing to do with combat. Is that what we are, mates, after last night? Nera replied, a deeper blue flush spreading across her cheeks. And after what just happened, what would you call it? Before Daniel could answer, they reached the hangar doors. The sleek form of the Pathfinder waited beyond their salvation and their future. Self-destruct in 5 minutes, the computer announced. We'll continue this conversation once we're safely away, Daniel promised, his hand lingering on hers for a moment before he turned to the access panel. The doors slid open, revealing the Pathfinder in all its glory, and standing between them in the ship, 2 more Kravak scouts, weapons raised and ready. Don't move, Daniel whispered, pulling Nera back from the doorway before the Kravak could spot them. His mind raced, calculating options as the self-destruct countdown continued its merciless progression. Self-destruct in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Nera's eyes were wide but determined. What do we do? Daniel peered around the edge of the doorway, assessing the situation. The 2 Kravak scouts stood alert, their weapons trained on the hangar entrance, clearly expecting company. The Pathfinder sat tantalizingly close, its sleek hull gleaming under the hangar lights. There's something I didn't mention about this hangar, Daniel said, his voice low and urgent. Emergency defense protocols. The original designers built an automated turrets concealed in the ceiling. Nera followed his gaze upward, but saw nothing. I don't see any weapons. They retracted, can only be activated from that control panel. He pointed to a console on the far side of the hangar near the Pathfinder's boarding ramp. If I can reach it, I can trigger the defenses and clear our path. That's at least 30 m of open space, Nera observed. They'll see you immediately. Not if they are distracted. Daniel's eyes fell on her staff. Can you create another energy pulse, something bigger this time, enough to draw their attention, while I make a run for the panel? Nera nodded, gripping her staff tighter. I can do better than that. On my world, we use these for more than just amplifying psychic abilities. What? She closed her eyes, concentrating deeply. The staff began to glow with an intense blue light, pulsing faster and brighter until it seemed to vibrate in her hand. With a swift motion, she thrust it forward through the doorway, sending a brilliant arc of energy across the hangar. The bolt struck the far wall, exploding in a dazzling display of light and sound. Both Kravak whirled toward the disturbance, their attention momentarily diverted. Now near a hiss, Daniel sprinted into the hangar, keeping low and using cargo containers for cover. The Kravak, realizing their deception, began firing wildly in his direction. Energy bolts sizzled past, scorching the floor and walls around him. Self-destruct in 3 minutes. Nera stepped into the doorway, staff raised, and sent another energy bolt, this time directly at one of the scouts. It struck their creature's shoulder, spinning it around with the force of impact. The second Kravak turned its weapon toward her. Nera, down, Daniel shouted. She dove to the floor as disintegration fire passed overhead, close enough that she could feel the heat on her back. The near miss sent a surge of fear through her, but also a strange exhilaration. Fighting alongside Daniel felt right somehow, as if they'd been partners for years rather than mere hours. Daniel reached the control panel and slammed his palm against the scanner. Emergency protocol Alpha authorization Phoenix 7 Delta 9 ! The ceiling panels above the hangar slid open, revealing sleek, deadly turrets that swiveled toward the Kravak scouts. Before the aliens could react, the automated weapons opened fire, cutting them down in a precise barrage. Clear, Daniel called, already working the panel to prep the Pathfinder for launch. Nera, run! She sprinted across the hangar as the boarding ramp of the spacecraft descended. Daniel met her halfway, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward their escape. Self-destruct in 2 minutes. They raced up the ramp into their Pathfinder's interior, compact but efficient space with 2 pilot seats, a small living area, and what appeared to be a medical bay. Daniel immediately took the pilot's position, his fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease. Strap in, he instructed as the ship's engines hummed to life. This is going to be close. Nera secured herself in the co-pilot's seat, watching in fascination as Daniel worked. There was something mesmerizing about seeing him in his element, confident, focused, his movements precise and economical. Hangar doors opening, he announced, flipping a series of switches, preparing for emergency launch sequence. The massive doors above then began to slide apart, revealing the desert sky beyond. Sand immediately began pouring in around the edges, remnants of the storm still swirling above. Self-destruct in 1 minute there. Pathfinder rose smoothly from the hangar floor, hovering for a moment before Daniel angled it toward the opening hold. On the ship shot upward, accelerating with a force that pressed Nera back into her seat. They cleared the hangar doors with seconds to spare, emerging into the harsh sunlight of the desert world. Daniel banked hard, putting a distance between them and the outpost. Through their view screen, Nera could see the desolate landscape falling away as they climbed higher into the atmosphere. Self-destruct in 10-9-8. Brace for shockwave. Daniel warned, his hands steady on the controls. 3-2-1. The explosion bloomed beneath them like a deadly flower, a sphere of blinding light expanding outward from where the outpost had been. The Pathfinder shuddered as the shock wave hit, but Daniel's expert piloting kept them stable. Nera released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "We made it." Daniel engaged their autopilot and turned to her, his face breaking into a relieved smile. "We did." The adrenaline of their escape still coursed through them both. Without thinking, Nera reached for him, her blue fingers intertwining with his tan ones. The simple contact seemed to complete a circuit between them, in the tension of the past hours transforming into something else entirely. "You're bleeding again," Daniel said softly, noticing fresh blood on her shoulder where the wound had reopened during their flight. "It's nothing," she assured him, but he was already rising from a seat. "Come on, there's a medbay, let me take care of that before we plot our course." In the small medical compartment, Daniel gently cleaned her wound with antiseptic. His touch was tender, a stark contrast to their fierce warrior who had fought the Kravac with such primal intensity. Nera watched his face as he worked, fascinated by the play of emotions across his features. "What?" he asked, noticing her gaze. "I'm trying to reconcile the different sides of you," she admitted, the solitary survivor, the skilled pilot, the fierce protector. Her voice softened, the gentle lover. Daniel's hands paused in their work, his eyes meeting hers. "Humans contain multitudes, as one of our poets once said. We're complex creatures." "I'm beginning to see that." Nera reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "And I find I like every version of you I've discovered so far." The small confines of the medbay seemed to grow warmer as they gazed at each other. Their ship hummed around them, carrying them safely away from danger and into an uncertain but promising future. "Where to now?" Nera asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have options," Daniel replied, finishing the bandage on her shoulder. "The nearest human colony is 3 days' journey, or we could set course to intercept the Kravac fleet, try to warn their next targets." "What would you choose?" Daniel considered. "For a moment, both paths have merit. The colony would welcome you. Humans have always valued allies who understand the Kravac threat, but warning others." His expression grew determined. "That's what humans were meant to do, to protect, to stand against the darkness." Nera smiled, feeling a surge of admiration for this man and the species he represented. "Then let's do both. Warn the others, then find your people together." The word hung between them, full of promise and possibility. As the Pathfinder soared through the star-speckled void, Nera sat cross-legged on the floor of the ship's small common area, her ancestral staff balanced across her knees. The events of the past days had left her little time to properly commune with the ancient artifact, a ritual her people performed daily to maintain their connection to their heritage. Daniel watched from the doorway, fascinated by the soft blue glow emanating from both Nera and the staff. Her eyes were closed, her breathing slow and measured, her silvery hair floating slightly as if suspended in water. "You're staring," she said without opening her eyes, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "It's hard not to," Daniel admitted, stepping into the room. "You're quite a sight." Nera opened her eyes, the glow fading as she returned to full awareness. "In my culture, watching someone during their communion is considered rather intimate. Should I apologize?" Daniel asked, sitting beside her. "Not at all." She leaned toward him, her shoulder brushing his eye. "Find I enjoy your attention." The moment was interrupted by an urgent beeping from the cockpit. They exchanged concerned glances before hurrying to investigate a transmission. Daniel explained, sliding into the pilot's seat and activating the comm system from the human colony. A holographic projection flickered to life above the console, a stern-faced man with silver-streaked hair in the bearing of someone accustomed to command Outpost 7. "This is Admiral Reeves of New Terra Colony. We've detected your launch signature. Identify yourself immediately." Admiral Daniel responded, Straightening instinctively. This is Daniel Clark, sole survivor of Outpost 7. I've evacuated the station following Quack contact and I'm currently en route with an ally. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. Kravak, after all this time, his gaze shifted to NRA curiosity and suspicion. Warring in his expression. And your ally is NRA of the Oleary, she introduced herself, stepping forward. My world was recently destroyed by the Krevakai. Escaped through a portal that brought me to Daniel's planet, the Oleary. The Admiral's expression changed to one of recognition. We've been monitoring your species. Your psychic capabilities are quite remarkable, Admiral Daniel interrupted, his voice urgent. We have reason to believe the Kravak may have tracked Nero's portal signature. If they've analyzed the energy pattern, they could trace it to New Terra. The Admiral finished grimly. Our sensors have already detected a Kravak battle group changing course in our direction. Estimated arrival 36 hours. Nera felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. More lives at risk because of her escape. We're setting course for New Terra immediately, Daniel said. The Pathfinder is fast. We can be there in 20 hours to help with preparations. Acknowledged. We're mobilizing defenses now. But the transmission crackled with interference, outnumbered any assistance. The Admiral's image dissolved into static, signal lost. Daniel reported, already plotting their new course. The Quark must be jamming communications in that sector. As he worked, Nera felt a strange vibration from her staff. It had begun to pulse with an inner light stronger than she'd ever seen before. Daniel looked. The staff rose from where she'd propped it against the console, hovering in mid-air. Light poured from its intricate patterns, projecting what appeared to be star charts onto the ship's view screen. What's happening? Daniel asked, amazed. I don't know. Oh, it's never done this before. Nera approached the floating staff cautiously. The ship's systems must have triggered something. Daniel studied the projected star chart. These coordinates, they're familiar but not part of our standard navigation database. Nera touched the staff and immediately a flood of images filled her mind. Ancient structures on a distant world, a weapon of immense power, and two races working together to create it. Humans and Ally the Forge. She gasped, pulling her hand away. Daniel, I saw it, a weapon created by our ancestors, something that could defeat the Kravak. We're a system near Neutra. We could reach it on our way to the colony. Nera's eyes shone with hope. This is why I was led to you, why I survived when my world didn't. We're meant to find this weapon together. Daniel hesitated only briefly before adjusting their course. If there's even a chance it exists, we have to try. Their journey to the mysterious coordinates passed in a blur of preparation and shared intimacy, with the possibility of facing the Quack fleet looming before them. Daniel and Nera found themselves drawn together in the quiet moments between planning and training. On their final night before reaching the coordinates, they lay entwined in their ship's small sleeping quarters, the soft hum of the engines creating a cocoon of privacy around them. If tomorrow goes badly, Nera whispered against Daniel's chest, I want you to know that finding you was worth everything I lost. Daniel's arms tightened around her. Nothing will go badly. Humans have a saying, fortune favors the bold. The Oleary have a similar expression. Nero replied, tracing patterns on his skin. We say those who dance with destiny must lead with their hearts. And what does your heart tell you now? Daniel asked, his voice husky in the dimmed light. Nero raised herself up to look into his eyes. That this us is more than chance. The universe brought us together for a reason. Their lips met in a kiss that spoke of possibilities and promises. Their bodies finding that perfect harmony. They discovered in each other's arms. In the face of uncertainty, they found solace and strength in their connection, a bond that transcended their different origins. Morning found them approaching a small, unremarkable planetoid orbiting a dying star. The staff's projection led them to a specific location on the barren surface. There's nothing there, Daniel said, puzzled. As they entered orbit, no structures, no energy signatures. Trust the staff, Nera urged. My people's artifacts don't lie. They landed near the coordinates, donning environmental suits before venturing onto the airless surface. Nera carried her staff, which pulsed with increasing intensity as they approached a featureless expanse of rock. Here, she said, planting the staff firmly on the ground. The moment it made contact, the surface beneath them trembled. Cracks appeared in the rock, spreading outward in geometric patterns that matched those on the staff. With a grinding rumble, the ground split open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. After you, Daniel said with a wry smile, activating the light on his suit. The staircase led to a vast chamber Filled with technology unlike anything either of them had seen, a perfect blend of human ingenuity and a Larry psychic. Engineering our center stood a device resembling a massive version of Nera's. Staff surrounded by control consoles, the Harmony Spear, Nero whispered their name coming to her as if from ancestral memory. It doesn't destroy the crack, it disrupts their hive consciousness, rendering them incapable of coordinated action. Non-lethal, Daniel noted with approval. Our ancestors were more merciful than I might have been. They worked quickly to understand the ancient weapon, Nera's psychic abilities and Daniel's technical knowledge complementing each other perfectly. By the time they received a desperate transmission from New Terra reporting the early arrival of the Quark fleet, they had the Harmony Spear loaded aboard the Pathfinder. The battle above New Terra was already raging when they arrived. Human ships, though advanced, were outnumbered 3-1 by the Quark vessels. The colony's orbital defenses were failing. We need to get within range of their command ship, Daniel said, piloting the Pathfinder through their chaos of battle. Can you identify it? Nera placed her hands on the Harmony Spear, now integrated with the ship systems there, she said, indicating a massive vessel at the fleet center. All commands flow from it. Daniel maneuvered with skill born of years of training, evading Krabak fire as they closed in on their target. Ready, Nera nodded, channeling her energy into the ancient weapon for both our peoples. The Harmony Spear activated, sending a pulse of energy that engulfed the Kraybark fleet. For a moment nothing seemed to happen, then one by one the enemy ships began to drift, their coordinated attack patterns dissolving into confusion. It worked, Daniel exclaimed as the human fleet seized the advantage, quickly surrounding their disoriented Kraybark vessels. Hours later they stood in New Terra's command center as Admiral Reeves addressed their assembled leaders. The Kraybark threat had been neutralized, their ships captured intact, their warriors rendered harmless without a single death. Today marks a new chapter in human history, the Admiral announced. For 3 millennia we've hidden in the shadows, rebuilding our strength, and today we step back into the light. His gaze fell on Daniel and Nera, standing side by side, and we do so with new allies at our side, the IRI and humans once again united as our ancestors intended. Later, as they stood on a balcony overlooking New Terra's capital city, a marvel of human resilience and ingenuity hidden for centuries, Nero leaned against Daniel's shoulder. What happens now, she asked, watching the twin moons rise over the horizon. Now we rebuild, we warn other worlds about the Kravik, we search for more RE survivors. Daniel turned to face her, taking her hands in his, and we do it together. Together, Nera agreed, her blue skin luminous in the moonlight. I like the sound of that, Daniel smiled, and drawing her closer. You know, when you first stumbled into my cave escaping that sandstorm, I never imagined where it would lead. And where has it led? Nera asked, though she already knew the answer in her heart. To exactly where we're meant to be, Daniel replied, sealing their promise with a kiss.